Sam has been an integral part of the Barrington community for over 50 years. In addition, Sam has also been recognized for launching a CPR program in Barrington and serving as the staff director for Citizens for Conservation. She's also participated in many mission trips abroad and in the United States to places like Haiti, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Mexico, and Appalachia. Tonight we're going to start off with a short movie clip that Sam has provided. Then she and I will do a quick conversation with question and answers, and then we'll open it up to conversation with the rest of you. Sam, did you want to speak?
Thank you for being here, all of you. A few weeks ago, I was here for a presentation, and I was sitting a few rows back, and I was in the middle. And a woman next to me, after the program had gone on for a while, turned to me and said, "Isn't this the program about the return of the peregrine falcons?" And I said, "No, it isn't." She picked up her purse and her water bottle and walked across us and left. And so I wanted to assure you, I'll tell you again, that this is not the program about the return of the peregrine falcon. It's a taping of a short program that the library is doing called Community Conversations. And I want to emphasize community. And it's for the local history archives. And I hope that when someone in the future views this, they will see all of you, and they will see it as a recognition and celebration of what has been accomplished in this community by so many dedicated and passionate volunteers. And I'm hoping that those of us who are here tonight might get some more energy and excitement to keep us going, because there's always more to do. I'd like to share a quote by Wendell Berry. "There are moments when the heart is generous, and then it knows that for better or worse, our lives are woven together here, one with another, and one with the place, and all the living things." And I think that represents pretty well what we are all about. But I just want to share it one more time. There are moments when the heart is generous, and then it knows that for better or worse, our lives are woven together here, one with another, and with the place, and all the living things. This community, as you know, is unique. It's always been said that you can hear about a need on Sunday, and by Wednesday, there's a new nonprofit being formed. And Dr. Seuss said it well when he said, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better." No, it is not. So I think this is a room full of people who care a whole awful lot. And thank you for being that way. Just one example of how things start with volunteers and then move along over the years. We know that back in the late 60s and early 70s, this community, a number of people in the community, knew that metropolitan sprawl was coming this way, and that there was a threat to the lakes, streams, creeks, wetlands, bogs, fens, woodlands, savannas, prairies, all of them in our area, because it's a unique area. And these studies said that there would be two organizations they suggested be formed. One would be what turned out to be BACOG, the Barrington Area Council on Governments, and then the other is what turned out to be Citizens for Conservation, to protect the ecosystems that we have here. And Nate, I'm going to ask you to put in just a minute before you start, I do want you to see that this is a DVD that actually we put together at the request of Susan Lenz. She asked if we could have something that she could use with middle school students to help them see that they can do something for the environment. And there are just a few things that I want you to note, because this is just images. It's not going to be a script. I may just point something out as we go along. But you'll see the fourth graders who are part of the science curriculum. They're at Grigsby Prairie every fall. They're at Grigsby Prairie, Flint Creek Savannah, and Spring Creek Prairie. They're doing drawing and measuring of native plants and seed collecting and discovery walks. And it takes about 150 Citizens for Conservation volunteers and parent chaperones to put this program together. And this year, one of the girls, fourth grade girls, when she was out on the prairie, was heard to say, "Wow, I'm in my element now." And that was very exciting for all of us. Well, you'll see all ages, elementary, middle, high school, adult. and working in all seasons. You'll see winter scenes of Flint Creek Savannah, and then you'll see work groups cutting brush all winter long. You'll see winter classes, Eagle Scouts. They have many, many projects at Citizens for Conservation. You'll see moored seed collecting, carrying water to new plantings. You'll see the floating islands, which are out in our pond. You'll see people sitting on these big islands getting ready to plant native plants in them. You'll see people pushing them, pulling them into place, retrieving them. These floating islands have plants that have the deep roots that go down and clean the water in the pond, and then that water goes on to Flint Creek. The islands are also a sanctuary for sandhill cranes and other wildlife. You'll see that. You'll see interns very, very busy monitoring water quality and doing many restoration tasks. You'll see the spring native plant shrub and tree sale, and Baker's Lake Savannah, and control burns in spring and fall. You'll see people getting ready for the parade. And then the last picture I want you to see is the name of the many photographers who contributed to this little DVD. And it's just a typical example of how many people contribute to practically every project that we do in this community. So please enjoy the images. Yes, screechers. just an example of how many people it takes to get lots and lots of things done. And that's just one example of the many organizations in this town that have been started by volunteers and have just done amazing things. We have on the back table examples of materials from a number of not-for-profits in the area. And I want to just say that there are things from Journey Care, that was formerly Hospice and Palliative Care of Northeastern Illinois, and their motto is making every moment count. They also have their Be at Ease booklets out there on the table, because this is a community-wide project for helping us think ahead and do advanced planning for the end of life. And the 5 Wishes booklets are there. There are things from Harper College. It's called the Finish booklet, because we've learned that it's not just enough to start, but we must finish. And they're looking ahead to their 50th anniversary. There are many people in this community that are on the foundation at Harper, which helps raise scholarship money for students at Harper. Art in the Barn is just another example of a major community cultural event that raises funds for Good Shepherd Hospital, and it was started by volunteers. 2014 will be the 40th anniversary of the show. And it's another one of those events in the community or organizations where people who observe it say, I can't believe this is all done by volunteers. The Samaritan Counseling Center of the Northwest Suburbs, and also Family Services of Barrington Area, and BYS, Barrington Youth and Family Service. And I'm happy to say that the counseling there is not done by volunteers. So that's where groups, say, okay, we've got this started, now we need professionals. We have materials there from the BACOA, the Barrington Area Council on Aging. Many churches in this community have a long history of commitment to mission. The Crop Walk was just here in Barrington, which was, many of the churches joined on that. Our schools have a reputation for excellence and attention to each child, beginning with the Early Learning Center and going on through high school, and then even young adults with students who have had disabilities. The Heart Association on a local but a broader aspect too, and just so many things that have happened here. Those are just a few. Many have been started by volunteers and now, as I said, have staff. Others are still all volunteer. Others in the community are fundraising organizations that provide grants to these nonprofits to carry out their missions. And I think that people looking in on this community would probably say there is an unaccustomed generosity here of funding and time and energy and actual caring. I just thought I would close this little section of my program and tell you about, I think everybody has sort of a life-changing situation every once in a while. This book was very important to me. It's called The Family of Man. And this is a well-worn copy, and I can see a number of you have seen it. But when I was in college, this photographic exhibit by Edward Steichen was moving across the country. And it came to the Des Moines Art Institute. And I went on Sunday afternoon, the last day of the exhibit. And I thought, well, do I have time to do this? And I was so happy that I had gone, because those of you who have seen it, and I know a number of you have, it just tells the story of the family of man. It's people playing all around the world, playing games, people dealing with birth, dealing with death, and all the wonderful things that happen in between. So, as I said, it's a well-worn book, but I just felt as though it made a big difference in my life. And now, Barbara. And since we've given up our chairs, we'll just do this standing up.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for sharing those images. Those were absolutely amazing.
Well, many of the photographers are in this room.
Amazing pictures. So now Sam and I are going to do a little bit of a Q&A, and then afterwards we can open it up to the rest of you for community conversation. So Sam, let's start back to childhood. I read that you were born in
Okay, go back.
in Leon, Iowa.
Leon, Iowa.
Leon, Iowa. Can you tell us a little bit about what your childhood was like?
Well, Leon is a town on the water tower. It says Leon, Iowa, 2,509 friendly people, and they were basically friendly. But if you've ever seen the Music Man, They're a lot like the people in River City. But, well, my childhood was, I think, very much like a Midwestern child. I was outdoors a great deal of the time. And our front yard was a baseball diamond. So I had very understanding parents. I had an adventuresome father who was not very safety conscious, but he was very adventuresome, and that led to a lot of interesting experiences in our lives. But I was the oldest of four, 2 boys and 2 girls, and we just had a very nice life growing up, I would say.
And who made the greatest impression on you when you were young?
I would have to say it was my maternal grandmother. She lived in the same town we did. And I just saw examples of how to, well, number one, she was determined, she was resourceful, but I also saw examples of how to treat other people. People would come on Memorial Day and she would trim all of her peonies and give those all away so people could take them to the cemetery. She wrapped, and by the time they were finished, she had no flowers left, but she found that as a way to share. And but that was just sort of a typical example of the way she treated others.
And I also read that growing up, your mother would drive you 140 miles round trip so that you could take flute lessons. And in the book Live with Passion, there's a picture of you hugging a flute. So do you want to talk about how music has played an important part in your life?
Well, I will say that the little town where I lived, Leon, there was nobody who knew how to play the flute, so you couldn't take lessons from anyone. So she would drive me 70 miles to Drake in Des Moines, 70 miles back, but we would drive fast so we'd get back in time for Girl Scouts. So it was a whirlwind. But since then, yes, the flute has been, I used to say I'm playing in memory of my mother. But I also play, I think it's good for the brain to keep doing this, and I'm part of a group of 6 flautists who play at church, and then we played at Good Shepherd, and I think we're going to be playing at with Pat's home and a rehabilitation home. And it's just, oh, and one of the things I really enjoy, and I'm always glad that I can play the flute, and that's I play at Camp Courage for the memorial service for the children and the families, and that's just, I set aside that part of summer in order to be able to do that. So it is important.
And are you still connected to your hometown at all?
I have a lot of relatives there, and we do go, unfortunately, we go back for a number of funerals, but, you know, as we all get older. But yes, I'm certainly connected with my hometown.
So now, after you graduated from high school, you went to Drake University, and what did you study? What career were you hoping to pursue?
Well, I will say that before I went to Drake, I went to Graceland College, which is now Graceland University, but it was a college where everybody on my mother's side had gone to school. She had gone there, and her parents had gone there. And so we were the 3rd generation going there. Everybody, and all my brothers and sisters went there. It's now a 4-year school, but then it was 2. So then I went to Drake, and I went there primarily because of the flute professor. But I did get a teaching certificate, and that led me to Hawaii.
So now, when you were in Hawaii, I also read that when you were there, you had time to travel around to all the different islands. I was wondering, do you think that that experience had an impact on you as a global citizen?
Well, probably so, and that's where I met my husband, so it certainly had an influence on me. He was a Navy pilot there. I taught there when it was a territory. And my children say, how could anybody be old enough to teach when it was a territory? But it did become a state the next year. So, but yes, it was a very international experience, just as Graceland University had been. There were students there from all over the world. But yes, being there before it became a state and knowing how eager the people in Hawaii were they were so eager to have statehood. And of course, Alaska was first, and then they became states. So yes, it was a wonderful experience.
So you said you met your husband in Hawaii, and then about when did you come to the Barrington area, and what were your reasons for coming to Barrington?
Well, we came in 1968, and my husband was a pilot with American Airlines, and we wanted to live out where there was open space, and then he could, go into O'Hare. So we came because of the openness of the area. That was before we knew how nice the people here are.
And then you stayed. So when you arrived in Barrington, what were some of the first organizations that you became involved in? What influenced you to become so involved in the community?
Well, of course, like many people, I was involved with all the things that have to do with children, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, and all the, PTOs and that kind of thing. But then another person and I were asked to co-chair the CPR program, which was to train one. We wanted to be like Seattle. We wanted to train one of every 4 people in the life-saving skills of CPR. And at that point, nobody knew what CPR was, and they didn't know what cardiopulmonary resuscitation was, so we had to go to all the organizations in town and explain that, and then train all the instructors, and then we taught every day, Monday through Friday. There was a lecture, and then you also had to do a practice session. And we had to cancel a lot of during snowstorms, and I thought, oh, it'd be easier to do this in San Diego. but everybody in, a lot of people in Barrington did learn CPR, so that was great. And what else did you ask me? Oh, other things to get involved in?
Or what influenced you?
Well, I think the thing that influences a lot of us probably is I grew up in the small town of Leon, and if anything was going to be done, you just stepped up and did it. There wasn't a great management in the sky or anything. You just did it, and you formed it. If they needed Girl Scouts, you formed Girl Scouts. If anything that needed to be done in that little town, the people who lived there did it. And I think that's why we do things here too.
So you kind of answered my next question, but I'm just going to say this for everyone because I think it's really incredible that you were involved with educating the public with CPR, as you said. You were also the first woman to chair the American Heart Association of Metropolitan Chicago, and were a founder for the Hospice of Northeastern Illinois. So you kind of answered my next question, which was what makes you so active. But I think that's really incredible, and if you want to add anything else about those.
Well, I would say that in the case of many things, for instance, the hospice, all of us here become involved very often because someone asked us to. And it's just the way we live. Someone asks us to do it, and then we say, well, I'll at least try. And in the case of hospice, do you want me to just say that quickly?
Absolutely.
A woman called me and said, I'm calling, you don't know me, but I'm calling to ask you to attend a meeting in my place. She said, my husband is dying of cancer, and so I can't go to this meeting, but his oncologist and a psychologist from Zurich feel that we should start something here called hospice. And none of us knew what hospice was at that point. It was a new concept. It was in England, but we certainly didn't know here. And so I went to that first meeting, and I think a lot of people who went to that first meeting and another one that was held just decided, we should try to do this. And we all read a book called The Hospice Movement, in which we learned that hospice was a medieval concept, and hospice was a place where people stopped on their journey. And that seemed very appropriate for a concept of hospice. And I remember when we had our first 4 patients, we just thought that was really something. And of course now we have 98 pediatric patients, and then then just so many more patients. So it's been a worthwhile endeavor.
You've also been involved in many mission trips abroad to Haiti, Dominican Republic, Honduras, and Mexico, and also to Appalachia in the United States. Do you have any particularly memorable moments or anything that you took away from those experiences that you wanted to share?
Well, I learned that I had a lot to learn, and we think we know what the people need, etc. And I went with 3 different kinds of groups, depending on what the project was. Either it was a construction, or it was a health team, or in one case it was to see that artisans in the developing countries were receiving fair trade for the things that they were making that were being sold in this country. On a number of the trips, my sons went along, and that was very, very educational. In fact, you know, you'd be up on a roof, and a son would say, "I didn't know you could do that," and you would say, "Well, I didn't know you could do that." So it was a very nice experience. And I remember when we were in Haiti, one son said, "Do people ever go home after 1 week?" But there was no way to do it. But then he stuck it out, and he did a good job. But one thing I guess you learn every place you go is that you should not have preconceived notions about what the people need or what the people want. I found that people, you know, they would travel long distance in the rain, at night, in the dark to come to a worship service. Or I remember spending a lot of time instructing a mother on antibiotics and what to do with her child who had ear infection and what to do with all the antibiotics and how to time it. And what she really wanted was a bar of soap. So it was just a real learning experience that we don't often know what the people really need, and they're very appreciative. And those are all very good experiences, I think.
So with everything you've done, I've read your resume, which is just pages long. Amazing, absolutely amazing.
I don't know who put that together. I didn't.
How do you find the time and energy to accomplish all of these things? Any insider tips?
Well, probably not insider tips because everybody here does the same kind of thing. You have to prioritize, and you have to, I think it helps a lot to have a very supportive family. It really helps a lot to have a supportive family. And I think it's, in this community, there are just so many people that will pitch in and help that you derive energy from your work with them. You never feel here that you're doing it yourself or that you're not too far out ahead. You feel that you're surrounded by other people who are like-minded and have the same priorities and energy level, and you receive energy from each other, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, don't you think?
And you've also received many awards. Is there one that you're particularly proud of?
Well, one, probably, I think it would be the Point of Light. And the only reason I would say that is that it was a national award, and you got a letter signed by the president. And I thought the other thing that was good about that award is you didn't have to go any place to get it. You just got the letter and said, "You are Point of Light #1 for October 4th," or something like that. So, you know, sometimes it's a big project to go to receive a gift or an award, and that was good. You just got the letter, so swell.
And what do you consider to be your greatest accomplishments?
Well, I think our 4 children, and I would say the 6 grandchildren, but I don't think I can take a lot of credit for that. But definitely the 4 children.
What do you believe are the current challenges facing the Barrington community?
Okay. Before I get to that, I just want to say, too, that being proud of the family. I do want to say how proud I am of our extended family, because our parents were, I told you that my father was very adventuresome, but not very safety conscious. Well, he was killed at the age of 53 in an airplane situation, and then my mother was also killed at the age of 53, so that meant that I was the oldest, and my brothers and sisters needed to get everybody through college, and then they all decided they want to get advanced degrees and all this kind of thing. So that was a challenge, but it was a good thing to do together. And the nice thing is, I think we've all been very pleased, is that we've remained a very close extended family. Mm-hmm. So that is, I think that is one of the things I'm really pleased about.
Mm-hmm.
So the last thing, was this the last thing? Okay.
The challenges facing Barrington.
Well, I just think we all feel as though we want to just make certain that there's no one who is falling through the cracks, and that's not easy. We still have unemployment here, and because of unemployment, we have people here who are hungry, as we know, those of you involved with the food pantries. So there's that. I think we want to make certain that everyone has access to medical care, both physical and mental. And there's some survey going on, right, or that's going to be going out to ask people, especially senior citizens, and that's a younger age group all the time, about how they feel they can access mental health help. And the schools, I think, are very good, and we want to make certain that each child has the opportunity to reach his highest potential. I think we will leave no child behind, just as though at CSC we don't want to leave any child inside. So I think that although we have a good handle on a lot of things, we all know people who need help and access to different services, and we have to help make sure that people know about those. Sometimes we have the services, but people don't know how to access them.
And as staff director for Citizens for Conservation, would you like to talk about any of the recent accomplishments and activities of the organization?
Well, I'm sure that the board members who are here would like me to. I will just say, since it's been a busy fall, we've done all the fourth graders, and then all the third graders came with the nature ladies to Grigsby Prairie. But we have had a very busy and successful seed collecting season, and then after the seed is all collected, then it's cleaned, series of days on which it is cleaned, and it's cleaned the old-fashioned way, by hand. And then there are days of, there's a day of weighing all the seeds, all the different kinds of seeds, and mixing is a big event when all the different kinds of seeds are mixed into separate, well, they're mixed with perlite and then mixed in different ecosystem for different kind of like wet prairie, dry prairie, or it's going to be, you know, used in all the different ecosystems. So that has just been completed, and now the volunteers are sowing the seed until the end of November in the prairies here. And then some of the seed is shared with other restoration groups. So that's pretty exciting, very exciting, actually, big year. What would you say, Tom? What's the number of volunteers? 208, something like that.
292.
Okay, 292 volunteers this year, so it's really quite incredible. And all ages, would you say? So that's really great. We have our winter schedule of our 4 winter programs already set by Community Ed. They are launching a great new program called Habitat Corridors. You're going to be hearing a lot about that, especially if you come to those 4 winter programs, and then on into the future, Habitat Corridors. Our children's classes are already scheduled for next year, all, you know, the whole once a month. And the owls will be back, and the children's classes are really quite incredible. We've got some of our leaders here too. So, anything else I should mention? Those are some of our main things that are happening, I think. But
And I know you have a lot of information back there.
there is. There's a lot of Citizens for Conservation information back there. And Sarah, did you bring some BACOA material? Okay. And so you'll see pieces of material about lots of other organizations too.
Great. And the last question, do you have a motto that you follow?
You know, when I was in college, there was a sort of a women's service group that you were elected to, and therefore you had to do a lot of work. But the motto there that I learned was, count that day as lost, whose low descending sun views at thy hand no worthy action done. And at first I thought, that is heavy. But the more you think about it, every single person is doing worthy actions every single day. And so I think that when I first heard that, I thought, oh, you've got to be doing something so stupendous all the time. I said, no, everybody I know is doing at least, well, sometimes it's really big, but sometimes it's very, very basic, and it's making someone's life better. So it's a worthy action that you're doing. So I think, you know, practically everybody does something, some worthy action every day. So I'll remind you, in case you everyone remember that. Count that day as lost, whose low descending sun views at thy hand no worthy action done. But anyway, you all do that every single day.
Thank you so much, Sam.
You're welcome.
Now we're going to open it up for some question and answers. If anybody has any questions? Yes.
Do you have any personal heroes or mentors in the environmental movement that really pull things together for you?
In the environmental
Yeah.
world? Well,
Like L'Oreal.
we have someone in our community who is, who's kind of a mentor, and she thinks not only locally, you actually saw pictures of her working with the children, but she travels globally on conservation efforts all over the world, actually, and that's Wendy Paulson. And she is self-effacing, I would say, but she sees the big picture. And probably one of the reasons that I think so highly of her is that she thinks so highly of Citizens for Conservation. And she, in fact, has said, and thank you for bringing this up, she has said that in her opinion and her experience, Citizens for Conservation is the best model of a community-based conservation organization that she knows of. And I think that's high praise because she sees conservation all around the world. But I would say Wendy, probably.
Any other questions? Yes.
Did Citizens for Conservation clear the buckthorn from the trail that runs along Miller?
Along where?
Miller Road.
No,
No.
Citizens Park, we didn't do that. We clear a lot of buckthorn, but not a lot.
Yes.
There's been volunteers from CSC.
Oh, you mean Mueller Road, you mean Mueller Road on the other side of Highway 59. You know what I was thinking of?
Yes, from Lake Barrington.
Yeah.
Town.
Those are some of our restoration workers, but they have taken on that project themselves, and they welcome other people. Yeah, so they've done that clearing, and that's mainly Carol Hogan and Wes Wolf, and then a lot of other people join in. But that's truly people. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that they've done a wonderful job there.
Anybody else?
That's good.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming, Sam, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight.